Hello and welcome to another edition of Straight from the Training Ground, the podcast where we share our love for the beautiful game and the people out in their community and beautiful things. And man, do we have someone here we're very honored to have with us, Jonathan Carone, who is out doing some beautiful things in many neighborhoods. Jonathan, thanks a lot for taking the time to talk youth sports with us today.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, so you are the creator and the host of Healthy Sports Parents, a podcast. You have a website, a lot of stuff on social media. Make sure you check out down below. We'll have all the links to everything you put out. Because I personally, once that popped into my Instagram stratosphere, I've taken a deep dive as someone who's coached, been around sports for over 20 years myself, and as a parent. What I love most about what you're doing is that um, I think we all talk about it, right? Parents, coaches, people at schools, we all talk about this kind of atmosphere, but you're putting it out in the open, and I think you're putting a positive spin where you're not trying to act like it doesn't exist, and not trying to have a negative connotation to it. You're trying to help people through this environment, which I don't know about you. I hope you agree. I think it's continually becoming an increasingly more high pressured environment of youth sports as parents.
Yeah, and I try not to wrap shame around it either
Yeah.
because I'm convinced that most parents just don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Most parents didn't play at a high level. Most parents haven't studied child psychology. They haven't studied sports psychology. They haven't dove into the things that high level coaches dive into. And so when you don't know better, you default to normal. And our brains, the way they're wired, like we're going to default to what just feels natural. And as you know this from a coaching standpoint, what is natural usually isn't what's best or healthiest. It's just
Yeah.
what's easiest. And so parents default to what's natural. And then you get this cycle of toxic feeding, toxic feeding, toxic. And then it just keeps spiraling because, well, if that parent's doing it, then we've got to do the same thing. If they're going to 3 tournaments this month, then we're going to get left behind if we don't go to 3 tournaments. Or if they're doing extra lessons, we've got to do it. And so no one has a chance to just take a deep breath and
Yeah.
say, is this good? Is what we're doing healthy? Is it setting our kids up for something good long term? We're living in the now because now is so stressful and it's very at the forefront. So I just saw it. I'm like, there's a better way. There's a healthier way, but it's going to take a bunch of us coming together and saying we're going to do the healthy way and letting that become the normal so that the toxic isn't the normal anymore.
Yeah, I love that. On your website, I picked up that you have the goal there. It says, our goal is to help parents develop the tools needed to approach your child's athletic journey in a healthy way." And I think that to me says it all. Um, was there any certain thing, a specific event that led you to your motivation to start all this? Was it just a culmination of years of frustration?
It's a little bit of both. So the story I go back to is 2 years ago, my daughter was 7 playing, I think it was 6 and 7 year old, maybe 7 and 8 year old YMCA basketball.
Love it.
And at 8 o'clock in the morning, there were parents yelling at this 16-year-old high school sophomore referee in the middle of a game. Grandparents were recording it on their iPads. Like, I'm like, these kids don't know how to dribble yet. And like, we're freaking out about how the results are. And so after that game, I went home and created a sweatshirt that said, "Youth sports are not about winning." And I wore that to every game the rest of the season. And then with my daughter's soccer team the next spring, I started wearing it then too, because there were just some parents who took winning at 8 years old way too seriously. They would get upset if we didn't win, and it was just my subtle reminder that youth sports are not about the result on the field. We want to win, sure,
Yeah.
but it's not primarily about that. And so it's one of those things. Once you see it one place, you start to see it everywhere. And we had I think the thing that pushed me over the edge to make me want to do it was we were at a game this past fall, and I saw a dad yelling at his daughter his 8 year old daughter after a game to the point that she cried and hugged on the mom because of
Yeah.
something that happened in the game. And I'm like, I don't think that dad's a bad person. I don't know him,
Yeah.
but like he reacted in an emotional way that was unhealthy. And I don't know that he's ever had someone teach him the proper ways. and the proper ways to process and the proper context. So I'm just like, there has to be a better way, and there has to be a way to get some of these tools and thought processes into the hands of parents so they can properly contextualize what it is we're doing.
Yeah, fantastic. I couldn't agree more. So, what along those lines, what do you hope to do? What do you try to provide to parents?
So we're just getting started. You and I are recording this, like the fourth episode just came out today.
Hmm.
And so this thing has blown up quicker than I ever expected to. That Death of Rec League video has gotten over 3.5 million views at this point. It led to like 15,000 followers on Instagram in a week. So it's been nuts.
It's fantastic.
Um, but a couple things that I would love parents to realize is that number one, your kid's not going to get left behind. Like that's like, there are people who prey on our insecurities and make us think that our kid's going to get left behind. Before puberty, they're not going to get left behind. Our number one job before puberty is helping our kids learn to love being active, love competing, and hopefully fall in love with their sport. Because if they can do those three things, they will naturally become intrinsically motivated to get better. They will be the one who goes out in the driveway and puts the work in. They'll be the one that starts asking for lessons or asking for a competitive team or something like that, as opposed to parents seeing their kid at 7 years old who can hit a coach pitch baseball or who can dribble around another kid in soccer and saying, you know what? He's too good for rec league. We got to go to the club. We got to go to whatever it is in that context of their sport. And if we can do that, and if we can let the kid lead, then we're more likely going to not burn them out, not push them too far too fast. And we're going to let them have ownership of this journey as opposed to trying to micromanage it because of some type of unrealistic expectation that we have.
Yeah, and I as a coach myself, I've noticed over the years, you mentioned motivation, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but just in general, I think a lot of kids, the majority of kids are not intrinsically motivated anymore. It's extrinsic. And whether it's from social media, whether it's from their parents, pressure, they feel like whatever it is. Um, one of the things I picked up on one of your, like I said, as soon as your stuff started popping up on my Instagram, I was all over it, and I was watching some stuff. One of the best things I picked up that I remember was I think you said on, I forget who you were talking to, that you think it's important every 7 or 8 year old kid should experience playing on our local community team and going out to get ice cream after a game. Like I'm sure you, myself, everybody of a certain age, you just did that. Whether it was little league baseball or whatever. Um, where do you? I couldn't agree with you more about that, by the way. But what? That's a great statement. What do you feel is missing in that now? Is it the pressure? And why do you feel like that's such a vital part of growing up? Because I do too.
So there's two questions there. I think it's such a vital part of growing up because competition with your friends from school, your classmates, that makes memories that will last a lifetime.
Yeah.
That creates friendships that will last forever. I can point back to third, fourth, fifth grade rec league basketball and baseball games, even a couple soccer games that I remember playing. And like, I can go to that friend right now. I'm 38 years old and we can talk about what happened there.
Yeah.
And I think that's just an important part of growing up because that is where the love for the competition and the sport happens. Because would you rather compete against your friend from school or the kid from 3 towns over who you'll never see again at seven
Yeah.
years old?
Or a different state.
Yeah, or a different state. And so like competing against each other and like getting those bragging rights at school on Monday morning, like, or teaming up on Monday morning, you and your buddy walk into school knowing you had a great game over the weekend. Like that's just so much fun. And the other piece of it is the familial piece of it where grandma and grandpa can show up at the game or
Yeah.
aunts and uncles can show up. I remember last year, um, there were a couple games. I live back in my hometown now. I moved back here 5 years ago, so it's the town that I grew up in. And so the soccer league we're in, some of the kids that I grew up with now have kids that are the same age as my kids, so that we're playing against each other. And I see kids I knew When I was 6 years old, they're now the 38-year-old parents on the other side of the field. And so I remember a couple games specifically where I'm coaching and I look across the field, and people I went to high school with who are friends with adults whose kid are playing have shown up to support their friend's kid.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can do that when you're at the neighborhood park. Like Uncle Chris, who isn't really your uncle, he's just around your family because your parents and him have been friends for a while. He can show up at your game, and everyone knows Uncle Chris is the coolest person in the world because he's not your parents.
Yeah.
And so for him to just show up at the park on a random Saturday to support you when you're 8 years old, what's like, we don't get that type of support when we're traveling 30 minutes, an hour, 4 hours to games when we're super young. So that's why it's important there. But then when you look at, I mean, you speak most about soccer in here. Let's talk about the soccer academies. Like, yes, when you start dribbling at 8 years old, you're going to, if you're good at it, you're going to be able to dribble around some kids who are just learning how to kick a ball.
Sure.
Yes. Doesn't mean your kid's going to be messy. It doesn't mean your kid's going to be like top of the line. It just means they've developed a love for it sooner. I'm all for fostering that love. But what you can also teach your kid is how to be a great teammate, how to find the pass, how to find the kid who may be open to see other things instead of doing it all yourself. And so there are opportunities. You can even have your kid at that age start helping their teammates learn how to do it. And if you can get kids teaching each other how to dribble better, how to shoot, how to whatever the skill might be, then they're also learning the teaching side of it. So imagine if we had a generation of kids who not only were good at the skill, but could communicate and teach the skill to their friends too. How much not only better athletically would they be, but think of their leadership skills when they get to be 16 years old. Think of their communication skills and the interpersonal skills that they would develop by helping others along the process who may not be where they are yet. And then, sure, when we get to 12s, when we get to closer to middle school, let's go compete. Let's
Yeah.
go and start traveling a little bit. But at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, let's stay home and be around our friends.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Those are some great points. So here's one of my big questions for you, and I'm curious to hear your answer. I get asked this a lot as a club coach, and as a high school coach. Parents come to me. What is your advice to parents who have kids in that age group you're talking about, the younger elementary, their kids playing that local rec league, whether it's t-ball, basketball, soccer, whatever, volleyball, and the wife goes home, the husband goes home, you're talking to each other as a parent about should we make that move to travel? Whether it's 8 years old, 10 years old. 'Cause to me, it always comes down to two of the things I think you talked about already. FOMO is a real thing, fear of missing out. And then, like you said, the lack of education. And I've had parents come to me and say, we just don't know what to do. Like you said, if our kid wants to play in middle school, we just feel like this is what we have to do.
Right.
So what is your advice to, let's say, that family they have a 10-year-old, they've been playing in their local little league baseball, and it's spring and it's starting to be that time where tryouts are happening for the next year. What are your advice to parents in those difficult situations?
So I think we have to contextualize a little bit because different areas are going to have different pressures. I want to acknowledge that. If you're in an area that has different states call it different things. In my state, our high schools go 1A to 4A. If you're in an
Okay. Yeah.
area with like a 4A high school, your larger 1,500
Yeah.
person or larger high schools, then you know that the competition is going to be higher when you get to high school. And
Sure.
middle school, you're probably a more competitive area. And some middle schools have only one team. Some middle schools have multiple teams. So your context is going to matter. Your opportunity as you get older is going to matter. Generally speaking, though, if I can generalize, if your kid is not doing the work on their own, if they're not wanting to go out in the backyard and play catch, if they're not wanting to kick the soccer ball around in the front yard, if they're not wanting to go shoot on their own playing basketball, they're not ready for travel yet. Because if they're not wanting to get better, then why are we going to spend so much time and money making them get better? Because of
Mm.
fear? Well, if they're not ready for it yet, then we're making them do something that they're not interested in. Not because they love the game, not because it's because we're worried about their future. It's a natural concern for a parent. We're thinking 6 years ahead, they're not.
Yeah.
But what is going to happen? I mean, the stats say 70% of kids quit sports by the time they're 13.
Yeah.
There's 1,000 reasons that go into that. But even more so as you get older, if a kid does not love the sport, they're going to quit. Unless mom and dad are just super militaristic and make them play, but they're going to at least want to step away. So I'm a giant fan of letting the kid lead. If the kid wants to go travel, let's look at it. The example I'll give you is my son is in his 8-year-old year of U10. So right now, as we're talking, U10 soccer is 2015 and 2016 birth years.
Hmm.
He's a 2016. He's October of 2016. So with that, most 2016s are third graders right now. He's only a second grader.
Yeah.
So he's also bigger than most kids. He's 98th percentile height and weight. So we moved him up to U10 a season early. So he's actually going into his third season in U10 right now. So he's got an extra season. And so he's going to move up to U12 in third grade or into third grade, going into fourth grade. Most kids don't go into U12 until fifth grade. So we have the question, my wife and I were talking about, like, do we go classic at U12, U11, U12, which is fourth grade for him, which I feels a little early in terms of school, but age
Yeah.
wise, it makes sense. Um, but then I asked him, I'm like, hey, would you want to do this? I don't know. That was just, the kid wears a messy t-shirt to school 3 or 4 days a week. Like, he has multiple messy shirts. And so,
Yeah.
but he's not going out and practicing. He loves soccer. He loves playing. We're doing like this little preseason conditioning thing with a track club here in town right now to get him ready for a season. But, like, does he want to do 2 hour-and-a-half practices a week
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
travel up to an hour and a half for a game and play against better kids? Are we going to even have the coaching, or am I going to be like, I don't want to sound too full of myself, but right now in U10, I'm the most experienced coach in our league. And so, like, we're in a small town, so we don't have access to professional coaches. So
Yeah.
when his age gets up to classic, is U11 going to be a paid coach that can teach the technical skills, or is it going to be a parent coach? Like, if it's just parent coaches, why are we paying the money to go play against other people? Why aren't we just playing rec and doing the
Yeah.
same things, but doing it at home? And so I just said a lot of stuff right there. Ultimately, it comes down to, in my opinion, what does the kid want?
And
They're gonna
communication.
they're gonna catch up. If, like, more often than not, if they develop a love for a game, they're gonna catch up. They might be behind now, but once puberty hits, once they develop their grown bodies, if it's there, they're gonna put the work in and they're gonna catch up. So I wouldn't worry too much about being too late right now, or missing out right now. If the kid doesn't love it, don't push them too hard.
Fantastic. Yeah, I agree. And I hope a lot of people take that in and listen to what you're saying. That's some great advice. If you're just joining us, we're here with Jonathan Carone, the host of Healthy Sports Parents podcast. I highly recommend checking that out. The second kind of part to that question I'd like to add, Jonathan. So if you're having that discussion with your child and they don't want to move on to that travel scene, for a lot of parents, that's a tough pill to swallow, I think, right? What's your advice to parents in that situation when, and again, it goes kind of back to the extrinsic motivation, the parent wants it more than the child does. And that happens all the time, right? Do you have any advice to a parent in that situation? Because that is, I think, a difficult thing for a lot of people to take, which kind of leads into the FOMO thing. They fear, the people in their neighborhood are doing it. Why aren't we?
Your child's athletic journey is not a representation of your parenting.
Well put.
I purposely pause there because it's something we have to let sit in. Like, your child's athletic journey is not a representation of you as a parent. So if your kid just wants to play rec league with their friends, that's not a representation of you being a bad parent. On the flip side, your kid making an elite team at 10 years old doesn't mean you're a better parent either.
Yeah.
Like, so we're putting all of this stock in our kids' athletic journey and letting that define who we are as a parent and letting it define who they are as a kid. The truth is, one day they're going to play their last game. It might be 10 years old, it might be 12, it might be 18. If you're lucky, it might be 22. But at some point, they're going to play their last game. And if your identity and relationship is in the success of your kid's athletic journey, you're going to be in a really unhealthy place, not only through the journey, but when it's done. You're going to lose what feels like your purpose. Or
Yeah.
if you put that on them, like, think about it from their perspective. Mom and dad, I'm 8 years old, I'm 9 years old, I'm 10 years old, whatever it is. I just want to play a game, but mom and dad are pushing me to be competitive. And now I've got to work harder and I've got to do this. And if I don't do good enough, then dad's going to yell at me.
Yeah.
Mom's going to think, like, what does that do to the psyche of a kid who is still developing their feelings, who is still trying to understand their emotions, whose brain has not yet fully formed? So I would say, as a parent, you are doing a better job loving your child when you help facilitate their passions and help them find what they love, as opposed to putting your own expectations and your own desires onto them. Our job as parents is to raise healthy, fully functioning adults who have every tool they need to be successful in life. It is not to raise an elite athlete. It is not to raise an all-star 11-year-old at their sport. And so their thing might not be the thing you want it to be.
Yeah.
Their thing might end up being something you know nothing about. Facilitate their passion to the best you can, within reason. Help them find the thing they love that is a healthy thing, and then help them do it the best they can. If it's a sport, it's a sport. If it's band, it's band. If it's art, it's art. If it's robotics, it's whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
We want healthy kids. Part of that ideally is some type of physical activity so that they can learn to love being active. But what I will tell you today is, I hate running because running is punishment in my
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
Because of the way I was taught growing up, running
Yeah.
is punishment. So not only does running hurt today because I'm old, but like the thought of running, why am I being punished? It took forever for me to wrap my head around the idea that going to the gym is a good thing, is a healthy thing. I'm not being punished by having to go work out. And so imagine if we could set up kids who enjoy being active, who enjoy doing physical activity. They're not going to do that if we're running them everywhere when they don't want to be ran everywhere, or we're forcing them into things that they don't want to be forced into. So hopefully you hear the nuance. Hopefully you hear that, like, let them lead, but also guide a little bit. But
You can
don't
provide
push.
for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
The
provide
thing
for
I
them.
use, I try to talk about this in comments a lot. Parents talk about pushing their kids into things. No one is pushed by consent. Like, you are, like, if I were to walk up to you and push you, you didn't ask me to physically push you.
Yeah.
Someone pushes someone else without their consent. But you can guide someone to where they need to go in gentle, not, I hate the word gentle, in proper, healthy ways, to kind of like, hey, like, you're walking next to them and leaning on them a little bit to push them to something that is healthy, as opposed to, you're leaning on them to guide them. I have to watch my words at times, to
Yeah.
guide them, as opposed to pushing them into something. And that sounds ridiculous, but the difference between the two, if you can wrap your head around guiding your kids towards something versus pushing them towards something, that will change the way you approach it in a way that I believe is much healthier.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jonathan, on one of your latest clips I saw, you mentioned, I want to bring this up because it was a different perspective I thought was unique. Yeah, I've been big on this. I grew up like a lot of people, playing pickup basketball, at your local park. You had to sit around and wait. If you lost, you had to sit out for a while, and it's one of the best things I still say to this day that I learned. If you lost, sometimes you had to sit out for an hour, if there were a
Yeah.
bunch of guys waiting to play, and you just had to earn your spot, and you had good days and you had bad days. But you had a clip recently, a couple of days ago, I saw where you said, kids just don't go out and play pickup games. They don't play at the park anymore. And couldn't agree more with that. But you had a different perspective on that. You kind of had more of the logistics and things you pointed out. You want to tell everybody a little bit more about that and what your take on that was?
Yeah. Again, it goes back to the idea that we often look at things from a surface level standpoint. Kids don't play today, they're on their iPads.
Yeah, yeah,
Both of those things are true.
yeah,
But why? Can we go a level or two deeper? Can we say why? Well, why don't kids go out and play? There's no safe place for them to play anymore.
yeah,
Like the example I used was the park by my house when I grew up. I lived a mile from the park. I could get on my bike, I would ride down the road in my neighborhood, turn down the other road going to the park, ride past a horse farm, and then I was at the park. Well, the owner of that horse farm died 25 years ago. And so the family has now sold off the land. 3 neighborhoods have gone in of about 100 homes. And there's another development being built right now with another 200 homes. So that same partially dirt road, barely paved road that I rode my bike down to get to the park, now has another, if we imagine two cars per home, has another 200 cars going down it daily, and about to have another 400 to 500 cars going down it. That's not safe for a 9-year-old to ride their bike down anymore. And so when we think about like urban planning or city development or whatever you want to call it, we build towns for cars. We do not build towns for kids. So think about how unsafe it is for a kid to leave their house on their own, walking, on their bike, on a skateboard, on rollerblades, whatever it is. Can they effectively and safely get to their park? Probably not. And if they can, what do they encounter when they get there? In my town, the basketball goals were taken down because of vandalism and people hanging out and doing things they shouldn't have. So a small
yeah,
minority ruined it for everyone else. The soccer goals are chained together during the off season because the insurance company told the soccer league that if you leave the goals out and a kid knocks one over and is hurt, they would be liable for it in a lawsuit. So the soccer league, even though they don't want to, they pull the goals together and chain them up.
yeah,
So we have a big open field, but there's no goal there.
yeah,
The baseball fields you can get onto sometimes. In our town, you can. In the comments of that video, other people were saying that the gates to the field were chained shut unless you got a permit to play on them because of the liability. So when you look at the way cities are developed, you look at the litigious nature of our society today and insurance and liability, not to mention the amount of people who might call the cops on a kid walking down the street by themselves, which is another thing that happens in areas. Like one person even said that they feared the judgment of other parents if they let their kid go outside and do something on their own away from home. So we just don't have a society that is built around kids having independent play. How do we get back to that?
yeah,
There's a lot of discussion about that. There's a lot of things, but I think it starts with realizing that the iPads and the video games are not a new thing. I played video games growing up. I
yeah,
just walked to a friend's house. I didn't, but
yeah,
if I had the internet, if I could play, like, so my 8-year-old plays Fortnite on the Nintendo Switch, but he will pull his iPad out and call his best friend on Facebook Messenger, like the kids messenger thing. And they'll sit there because we don't allow the talking through the game. We kind of lock
yeah,
that down, but he'll sit there and play Fortnite with his buddy. It's the
yeah,
same thing that we did. It's just I lived in a neighborhood I could walk to my friend's house and play NBA 2K1,
yeah,
where he would have to drive 10 minutes. I would have to drive him 10 minutes to get to his friend's house. And so kids aren't terribly different than we were. They're into the same type of things. They just have different access and different limitations than we have. And so Going back to the whole rec league versus travel, the whole point of what I'm trying to do is if we can think deeper about things, if we can understand and be open to information about the why, not just the what, then we can start seeing things in a different way and hopefully start responding in ways that are more empathetic and understanding as opposed to fear based or um, unrealistic expectation based.
Yeah, I appreciate it again. We're here with Jonathan Carone, the host of Healthy Sports Parents Podcast. Make sure you check him out. Jonathan, real quick before we get you out of here, I'm going to pull up your website again. I didn't do a very good job the last time. So, uh, last thing I want to get you out of here with, tell everybody a little bit about like what do you hope to do, and like you said, you're just getting started, but you've had some great things out there already. What have been some of the things that really stood out to you that you've learned so much or so far from some of the guests you've had, and this, like you said, you're just kind of breaking the ice on this. What are some of the most profound things you've experienced so far?
The first thing that comes to mind when you ask that question, it actually doesn't come from guests because most of the guests that I had planned here at the beginning were people I knew that I knew had a good perspective because I'm just starting out. I did not expect this type of response. But what I have seen in the comments and the messages that I've been getting are the people who have been there before us, the former college athletes, the former professional athletes, the Olympians, the physical therapists, the strength coaches, the ones who know better, all agree we're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
The ones who have been there before us, they're the ones who are keeping their kids in rec league longer, who are saying they're not going to go travel. They're the ones who are saying they're not going to play year round, that they're going to give their kids time off to rest and recover. If the ones, and I put this in a video recently and I stick by it, if the ones who have been there are saying we're doing it in unhealthy ways, why are we letting the Uncle Ricos who claim they would have been there had they not blown out their knee or if the coach would have believed in them? Why are we letting those people set the standard for what we do? Why are we not listening to the doctors? Why are we not listening to the psychologists? Why are we not listening to the Olympians and the professionals? And like, if they're saying it, like I had Coach Scott Jackson from, he's an assistant baseball coach at the University of North Carolina. He's been a head coach at the D1 level. He had a couple clips. We talked about specializing and going one sport. When should that happen?
Yeah.
And his opinion is that no coach should make another kid should make a kid specialize. That if a kid wants to specialize, that should be their choice, but there is value in playing multiple sports. And I've had pushback on that. Well, like, yeah, that makes sense for the elite athletes, but those who aren't elite have to specialize. Well, I hate to break it to you, but if you're not elite, you're not going to college.
Yeah.
Like 2% of high school athletes play Division One. And this is a soccer mainly podcast. 1/3 of Division One soccer players are foreign born soccer players.
Yeah.
So if the whole goal of your sports journey is to get a Division One scholarship, you're going to be disappointed. So if we can reframe our expectations to developing healthy kids who love being active, who love competition, who know the value of hard work and perseverance, if that is our goal, if we can reframe our youth sports journey to that, then we're going to be in a lot healthier place. If we get elite athletes out of that, that's just icing on the cake.
Yeah. Great.
But
Yep.
to go in thinking we're getting it's D1 or bust, or we're going to develop these kids into pros, like 6% of high school athletes play in college. 2% of that play at the Division One level. 1% of Division One athletes go pro. So much of it is genetic based too. So like, let's just be a little more honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
Our
And
kid
enjoy it.
capping out, yeah, and enjoy. Our kid capping out at varsity is a pretty dang great athletic career.
Absolutely.
A kid who plays through middle school, finds something else in high school, but then plays intramural sports in college and loves being active in their 20s and 30s so that they can develop and raise healthy kids as our grandkids in healthy ways. That's the dream, right?
Yeah.
For our kids to go live healthy lives, mentally, emotionally, physically, socially. That's the goal. It's not raising elite athletes. It's healthy kids and healthy relationships, because after they play that last game, we're still going to be their kid for the next 30 years. Or we're still going to be their parent, for the next 30 years. And how we treat them now is going to determine that relationship in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Absolutely, man. So I really appreciate it. Jonathan Crone again, Healthy Sports Parents. Make sure you check out their links. We'll put out stuff below. Check them out on social media. You're doing some great things, Jonathan. Really appreciate it. And I really, as a coach and as a parent both, I just want to thank you personally for
Thank you.
bringing this out into the public eye. You know, like we talked about, it's been going on for a long time, and everyone knows it's going on. But I appreciate you bringing it out into the public eye, and I also appreciate, you know, your positive spin on it. You know, you're trying to find solutions and trying to educate people on that. To me, a lot of it comes down to, again, as a parent, you have to have a little bit of that, you know, I don't know what you want to call it, that confidence within yourself as a family that, hey, we're doing what's best for us. You know, that might be okay for here or over there, but we need to do what's best for us, and
Right.
not get caught up in this whirlwind of youth travel sports and all those great things. So really appreciate it. Before we get out of here, I just want to thank everyone. We just recently hit 150,000 subscribers, so very
That's
appreciative
incredible.
of that.
Congratulations on that.
Well, thank you. We just want to thank everyone. Duke Tig Brand FC, Uno Zero, the OVPL, everyone that's been on here before us, great people like yourself, because as you know, in this world, we couldn't do it without all of you. So we really appreciate it. Continue to like and subscribe us. And man, make sure you check out Healthy Sports Parents. They're doing some great things. Thanks a lot, Jonathan.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you so much.